Most people think saving money means they're building wealth. In 2026, those are no longer the same thing. That's the trap. Right now, millions of people are doing what they were told was financially responsible. They stopped wasting money, started budgeting, and finally built savings. And honestly, compared to how most people live, that already puts them ahead because modern life is engineered to make spending feel effortless. Food arrives 30 minutes later. Subscriptions renew automatically in the background. Monthly payments quietly become normal. Spending barely feels real anymore. For a while, saving money feels incredible. You open your banking app and finally see numbers that make you feel safe. $3,000, $5,000, $10,000. Your car breaks down and you don't immediately panic anymore. Your manager schedules a random meeting and your first thought is no longer, I'm about to become homeless. For the first time in years, life feels slightly less exposed. But eventually something strange happens. The account balance keeps growing, but your life doesn't really change. And this is where the confusion starts, because saving money protects your future while investing changes your future. Those are two completely different jobs. That realization usually happens quietly. Maybe someone overhears coworkers talking about investing during lunch. Maybe they watch another finance video explaining compound growth. Maybe they notice their savings account earned $14 this month, while groceries somehow cost twice what they remember paying a few years ago. And suddenly a very uncomfortable question appears in their head. Wait, am I doing this wrong? Because most people were taught how to save money. Very few people were taught how to turn saving into wealth building. And most people never realize the gap until years already passed. Imagine two people, same city, same income, same starting point. Daniel and Alex both become financially disciplined at 28 years old. They stop wasting money constantly. They stop financing random purchases they barely remember buying 6 months later. They both finally build real savings for the first time in their lives. In the beginning, their lives look almost identical. Daniel keeps nearly all his money in savings because savings feels emotionally safe. Alex keeps emergency savings too, but starts investing small amounts every month into simple index funds. At first, Daniel actually looks smarter. His account balance rises steadily. No volatility, no stress. Meanwhile, Alex watches his investments move up and down constantly. Some weeks the market rises. Other weeks, every finance podcast suddenly sounds apocalyptic. 6 months earlier, those same people were predicting endless growth. And psychologically, that matters because humans love certainty. We love stable numbers. Investments feel uncomfortable because they fluctuate. Savings feel safe because they sit still. But after several years, the difference starts becoming emotional before it becomes mathematical. Daniel still feels safer. Alex starts thinking differently. Because wealth is usually built through ownership, not storage. The biggest long-term financial divide is usually not between people who save money and people who spend recklessly. It's between people who only save money and people who eventually learn how to make money grow. Saving money matters. People who never learn to save usually never become good investors either, because saving teaches discipline, control, and delayed gratification. But saving alone rarely creates meaningful wealth because cash behaves differently than productive assets over long periods of time. Imagine someone keeps $20,000 in a savings account earning 1% interest. After 1 year, they make around $200 before taxes. Technically, the money grew. Realistically, inflation increased the cost of rent, food, insurance, and transportation almost at the same time. Now compare that with investing. Historically, diversified stock market index funds have returned dramatically more over long periods despite recessions, crashes, inflation spikes, and the economy is ending headline people panic over every few years. And this is where future outcomes start separating aggressively. Same starting money, different future. Most people don't realize they're not just spending money. They're spending future compounding. A $780 monthly car payment invested for 30 years at historical market level returns can become over $1 million. That is not a car payment anymore. That is a future you traded away. And the dangerous part is that most of these decisions never feel important in the moment. One subscription feels harmless. One financing plan feels normal. But repeated decisions quietly shape what the future eventually looks like. The problem is not one purchase. It is the habit becoming invisible. And this is why investing feels uncomfortable for beginners, even when the math makes sense. Human brains are wired to avoid uncertainty. Savings accounts feel emotionally safe because the number barely changes. Investments fluctuate. Markets drop. Headlines become dramatic instantly. That's where many people stop too early because they confuse volatility with danger. Volatility feels uncomfortable. Fragility is dangerous. Those are not the same thing. And once that realization clicks, people start viewing money differently. The goal stops being keep every dollar perfectly safe forever. The goal becomes building a financial system that can survive long-term reality. And that transition should happen gradually instead of emotionally. The first step is building a real emergency fund. Not fake emergency savings that disappear every time flights go on sale. Real stability money. Enough to survive layoffs, medical bills, car repairs, or several difficult months without panic. Because the dangerous part was never just being broke. The dangerous part is building a life that only works as long as one paycheck keeps arriving on time. Nice apartment, new SUV, vacations. From the outside, everything looks stable. Underneath, the entire system depends on uninterrupted income. Most people never notice this until later. And this is where the emotional gap begins widening. Daniel still believes visible cash equals safety. Alex slowly realizes real safety comes from flexibility. One protects this month. The other slowly changes the next 20 years. That realization changes how people see spending entirely. Once someone understands compound growth emotionally, everyday purchases start looking different. Not in a depressing, never enjoy life again way. More like awareness. You start noticing how often comfort quietly replaces investing. Most wealth building still looks boring in the beginning. Nobody feels rich investing $200 a month. Nobody films motivational documentaries about automatically buying index funds every payday for 3 straight years. Quiet financial discipline is not exciting content. Then compounding stopped feeling theoretical. At first, investment growth looks small, almost disappointing. That's why many beginners quit too early. In the beginning, growth looks tiny. Then the curve bends upward faster and faster. Real investing works differently than people expect. Slower, but far more powerful. Because eventually there comes a moment where investment growth starts contributing more than personal deposits themselves. That's when people finally understand what compounding actually means. Money slowly begins working alongside labor instead of depending entirely on it. That's when investing stops feeling theoretical. Because most people spend their entire lives believing income only comes from work. Hours worked equals money earned. Stop working, income stops. Investing slowly breaks that relationship over time. And by year 15, the gap stops feeling theoretical. It becomes mathematical. Daniel protected money. Alex multiplied time. Same city, same economy, same starting point, different outcome. And it all came from one transition. Savings stopped being the destination and became the foundation for a different future. And this is the part most people underestimate because the transition from saving money to investing money does not feel dramatic in real time. Nobody wakes up one morning feeling financially transformed because they bought their first index fund. Usually it feels almost boring. Someone transfers a few $100s into investments, then goes back to work, back to traffic, back to answering emails that should have been 2 sentences instead of becoming a 40-minute meeting somehow. But the real difference appears later. That's what makes compounding so easy to underestimate. Saving money creates stability, while investing creates acceleration. Savings help people survive emergencies. Investments slowly change the scale of the future. Those are different outcomes, And human brains naturally prioritize visible short-term comfort over invisible long-term growth. Imagine Daniel again. 5 years later, his savings account looks healthy. He feels responsible, stable, safe. And honestly, compared to most people drowning in debt, he is doing better. But something still feels off. His lifestyle improved slightly, yet financial freedom still feels unbelievably far away. Meanwhile, Alex spent those same years investing consistently. Not perfectly, not aggressively, just consistently. Some months the market dropped. Some months headlines screamed about recessions, inflation, AI replacing jobs, or the economy collapsing again. Alex kept investing anyway. Then the math finally started becoming visible. The investments started growing faster than expected. Not overnight. Quietly. That's how wealth usually builds. Slow enough to feel boring at first, then suddenly fast enough to feel unfair. Compounding feels invisible right before it becomes powerful. That's why time matters so much in investing. Someone investing modest amounts early often ends up dramatically ahead of someone investing larger amounts later, simply because compounding had more years to work quietly in the background. And this is where many adults experience one of the most painful financial realizations of their lives. They start calculating how much money quietly disappeared into convenience spending over the last decade. Delivery apps, subscription stacks, car payments, random online purchases they barely remember anymore. Individually, none of those decisions looked catastrophic. Together, they quietly changed the future. A single expensive habit rarely destroys someone financially. Years of redirected compounding does. And most people never notice it while it's happening because convenience rarely feels dangerous in the moment. It feels normal, comfortable, efficient. Meanwhile, investing asks people to tolerate discomfort temporarily so future life becomes easier later. That trade-off sounds simple logically. Emotionally, it feels much harder. From the outside, the lifestyle still looks successful. Underneath, every month still depends on uninterrupted income. At first, it doesn't look dangerous. But this gets worse later, because eventually people realize they didn't just spend money. They spent flexibility. They spent time. They spent future compounding. And this is where thinking starts changing. Daniel still sees investing as risky because markets fluctuate. Alex stops fearing movement and starts fearing dependence. Dependence on one paycheck. Dependence on perfect stability. Dependence on needing every month to go exactly according to plan financially. That shift changes everything. Because once investing stops feeling like gambling and starts feeling like ownership, people stop reacting emotionally to every market movement. They stop waiting for the perfect time to invest seriously because eventually they realize the perfect time never emotionally arrives. There is always another scary headline, another recession prediction, another reason to wait. And while people wait, time keeps compounding quietly in the background. The most successful investors are usually doing something boring, ignoring noise, automating contributions, staying invested while everyone else panics temporarily. And eventually the math starts changing visibly. At first, people contribute most of the growth manually through their own deposits. Then slowly the investments begin generating larger portions independently. And one day people realize something strange. Their portfolio grew more this year than they personally invested into it. That's when money stops feeling passive. Because most people spend their entire lives believing income only comes from labor. Hours worked equals money earned. Stop working, income stops. Investing slowly breaks that relationship over time. It creates another engine underneath your financial life. At first, that engine is tiny, almost invisible, but given enough years, it becomes incredibly powerful. And this is where the emotional payoff finally appears. Not fake internet wealth, not pretending to be a finance genius online. Real freedom. The ability to survive layoffs without immediate panic. The ability to leave terrible jobs. The ability to handle emergencies without feeling like life is collapsing every few months. That's what investing is actually buying over time. Options. And options become incredibly valuable in unstable economies because financially exposed people stop thinking long-term. That pressure makes people choose the safe job, stay in the toxic job, delay the risky move, and call it responsibility. And this is why appearances become misleading. Someone earning $150,000 while spending nearly all of it often feels more financially stressed than someone earning far less while investing consistently every month. Outward success and actual stability are frequently completely different worlds. Social media simply made the illusion easier to fake, and eventually compounding exposes the difference. That's why the transition from saving money to investing money matters so much psychologically. Saving teaches control. Investing teaches ownership. Together, those two skills slowly create something most people spend decades searching for without realizing it. Breathing room. The feeling that life becomes less unstable year after year instead of more unstable. And ironically, that transformation usually starts with decisions that feel unimpressive in the moment. Investing consistently instead of waiting for perfect timing. Building emergency savings first. Avoiding lifestyle inflation before income increases disappear into bigger payments and temporary upgrades. Quiet, boring decisions. Repeated for years. That's how wealth usually gets built. Not dramatically. Consistently. By year 15, Daniel still feels stable. Alex starts feeling free. Daniel protected money. Alex taught money how to grow. Same city, same economy, same starting point, different outcome. And it all came from one transition. Saving stopped being the destination and became the foundation for freedom. Because saving money protects you for now, but investing changes what your life can look like later.